In this tutorial, I show you how to make this satisfying water simulation, or how to make a very similar one. I mean, if you ever try to do this and you failed, I'll show you probably where you went wrong. Right, let's go into Blender. Okay, this is the actual file I used. Well, let's click File, New, General, and with a new file, first thing I'm going to do is press Tab to go into edit mode, press G to grab, Z to lock it on the Z axis, and press 1. Then press Tab to go into object mode, press S5, and press numpad 1. And you can see we scaled along the red line, which is great. We're going to click wireframe mode with X-ray turned on, and we're going to create a new collection. This first collection is going to be called Domain. And this cube over here is going to be our domain. So we're going to call this Domain. When you do a water simulation, there are 3 core features: your domain, your flows, and your effectors. Your domain is essentially the area in which your simulation will take place. Your flow is the liquid, in this case, that we're going to be using. So the first thing I'm going to do is select this domain, press Shift D, right click, then press S to scale, and then press Z to scale only on the Z axis. Bring it all the way down just so that we've got this nice base water over here, and click on the, we haven't actually set up the physics yet. Yeah, let's click on these physics settings: fluid, flow, liquid, and we'll leave it on geometry. Up the sampling to at least 5 so it looks a lot better, and leave everything as is. The only other thing you have to do is to make sure that your flow does not touch your domain, or else it won't work properly. So the first thing we do is we press S. This time we're going to press Shift Z. Actually, let me press, I've got a screen key recording thing that might just help in case you don't understand my accent. We're going to press S, Shift Z, which means it scales on every axis except the Z axis. Bring it in just to make sure it's not touching that line, and that's fine. And then press G, Z, and just lift it up a bit so that the bottom isn't touching as well. So that's good, there's some space between it. Cool. Now that we've got that set up, we're gonna, and the flow is set up, let's put this in here, and we're gonna call this base flow. We're gonna have 2 flows. We're gonna have this base flow, and we're gonna have the flow from the top of the container. And let's click on this domain, click on the physics properties, click on fluid, choose domain, change it to liquid. And in order for this to work properly, you need to have as high of a resolution division as possible. And if you've got a potato PC like me, I'm just using CPU. I don't even have a graphics card on this laptop except for on board. Honestly, you should not have less than 150 as your resolution. If it's less than this, 100 you might be able to get away with, but really for the nice creme de la creme look, 300 to 500 is perfect if you have a graphics card. If you don't, try 100. 150 is really the starting point in my opinion. If you've got lots of time to render overnight, all right, so we've got 150 as the resolution. You probably want to make the time scale a little bit slower. Mine was set to 1, but 0.5 will just slow things down a bit, so it might have a slightly nicer effect in my humble opinion. The time steps, this is the maximum number of simulation steps to perform for each frame. This will improve the quality of how the liquid simulation moves to make it look more natural by having a whole bunch of micro steps. I would probably make this 10. If you've got a slow PC, don't play with this. Honestly, you only live once, and you don't want to be living for the render, if you know what I mean. So 10 and 5 should be good. All right, and we're going to scroll down here. What's important, you probably want to turn on mesh. It will just make your life a lot easier. Make sure this is turned on. It's crucial. As you can tell, I have a potato PC and it's driving me insane, but I still got this render done somehow. And please change the type to all. It will just make your life a lot easier. You can do modular, and then all does everything, so you have to do it once and it's less confusing. And always make sure resumable is turned on. That is crucial. So we've got resumable turned on. We selected all. We made sure mesh is ticked, and we made sure the resolution is 150. The rest is all kind of optional, but those are the key parts. Now that we've done that, and everything is nice and organized. We're going to create a new collection. And as you know, every water simulation has 3 core elements. We've got the domain, which is the area in which the simulation takes place, the flow of where the liquid simulation will be or come from, and finally the effector, how the water simulation interacts with other objects that are not water. And we'll create one now. Shift A, mesh, and let's use a default cube. We're going to press G, X, bring it here so we can see it. Choose solid view mode. All right, press numpad 1. Select this object here, press G to grab it. Well, press tab to go into edit mode, press G to grab the whole thing, press Z and press 1, and then press tab to go into object mode, press S2, let's make it just a little bit bigger. And once you've got it size that you like, S2 should be fine. We're going to press tab to go into edit mode, 3 to choose face select. We're going to choose this top face over here. We're going to press G, Z, and negative 0.5. Nah, screw it. Let's just manually do it. G, let's go. G, Z, and somewhere about there should be good. Two blocks. And once you've got that done, we're going to press I, and you can just kind of eyeball it. And then we're going to press, let's choose X-ray, I. That should be good. And then we're going to press R, G, Z to about there, so that the water slants downwards. Next thing we need to do is turn off X-ray mode for a second. Press Control R, create 2, and to get these straight, you press Alt. Well, deselect and press Alt and select this, and you're going to say SX0. Ooh, sorry, SY0. In this case, it's either XS0, SY0, or 0, one of the two. SY0. There we go. Now with this nice and neat, we can press 3, choose this top face, and we can choose X-ray again. And E, we can bring this down. It's already locked to the Z-axis, and we have to. One thing you need to make sure of. I'm going to choose left. That this needs to be lower than this over here, or else it won't work, or at least the same height. Let's make it the same height, because why not? Okay, cool. With that being the same height, we're now going to go to the side here, and I'm going to select this, and it's only those 2 bits, which is perfect. And we can press X, delete faces, and now we need to fix the mistakes we made. So let's go out of X-ray mode and take a closer look to see what's broken. And from the looks of things, it's only this. So we're going to press 1 for verts, and we're going to select these 4 verts by holding in Shift, and then pressing F to fill. And just like that, we've created our container effector. A few things that I would like to change with this as a personal preference. Tab, go into object mode. I'm going to press S, Z, bring it down a bit. S, Z, and then maybe go S, Shift Z, scale it up a bit. I don't know, you can have fun with that. So I'm quite happy with the size. Now we click on Fluid, Effector, and if you've got a potato PC, you can kind of leave everything as is. But if you've got a better PC, maybe make that 5. And with this selected, knowing that the water will always run down, we can just create a few of these now. We're going to press, it's in the effect already, which is perfect. We're just going to press, we might want to rename it quickly. Let's call this container.001. If we press Shift D now, 2 happens, which is great. Right click, numpad 7, G, X. And one thing you want to do to make the sim work, you need to make sure that it overlaps like this. If it doesn't overlap like this, it's not going to work out well. G, Z, it needs to have this overlap, or else the water will just run off and not work properly. And now you can obviously just rotate this in any angle you like. So we might go R, Z, 90. G, Z, maybe bring it up a bit, and we can just do this a few times and have some fun. Shift D, right click, numpad 7, G, Y, make sure there's overlap like that. Normally I make it just the base and that should be fine for the most part. Numpad 1, G, Z, bring it down to about, I don't know, there. And now we can press R, Z, 90 again. Shift D, X, make sure there's overlap, and then press R, Z, 90. G, Z, bring it down. And one thing you'll notice with the flow in the simulation, the lower you go, the more of the build-up happens, which means it'll be a bit of an overflow. So you might want to change the shape of some of these based on the effect you're going for, but we're leaving things as is. So I think this is enough for what we're trying to do. They already have the collision because we just duplicated it. I think 4 was more than enough. Let's select all of them quickly. Numpad 7, G, X, G, Y, numpad 1, G, Z, and we need to make sure they all are in here, and also we're going to have to scale them in so they don't look crazy. G, Z, something like that should do. Perfect. Now with that setup, the only thing we need to do is create one more flow, and we just press Shift A, mesh, and this time let's just use a UV sphere. It's always easy to do that. Select this domain, press H to hide it for now, and let's choose the sphere and chuck it in here. We're going to rename the sphere active flow should be a good appropriate name for this. Numpad 7, GZ, bring it all the way up here, S to scale it down, G, X, numpad 3, G, Y, G, Z, scale. And I'm quite happy with this. Now the big thing to pay attention to know whether this is going to work or not for this simulation, let's just set it up, fluid, flow, liquid, and we're going to make it an inflow, so water keeps coming out of here from the very beginning. We could tell it when to turn it on or off, but in this case it's just going to run non-stop. And you could up the sampling if you've got a good PC. If you don't, leave it as is once again, because every time you up this, the longer each frame takes to render, and it takes at least 24 frames per second, so you need a bunch of frames for an animation to work. Right, so I'm quite happy with that. Now we have to turn the domain back on quickly for a second. Numpad 1, and we're going to select the domain, and the thing to pay attention to is that you need to make sure that this is smaller than, much smaller ideally, smaller the better, than this, which it is, so it should work. So the test I normally run is I would go scroll all the way down here, because all is selected. I will quickly do a quick bake up until it reaching about 2 seconds, and I'll show you what I do once it reaches 2 seconds. Sorry, I meant not 2 seconds, 2 frames. We're on frame 2. Now we can hover our mouse here and press escape, and you'll see the purpose now. Once this stops, which will take a few seconds, working again. Yeah, there we go. So once you've done that, you can just go back to frame 1 over here by moving back 1 frame, the 1 frame that it's apparently rendered. There we go. Let me make sure it's recording. Yes, okay, cool. So the 1 frame that rendered. Now, a few things you want to do just to hide in your viewport here. The main thing you want to hide are pretty much your active flow and your base flow. So you can hide this collection. If you hide this collection and you still see those collections showing, it means your domain is now demonstrating it on those flows behalf, which means the render is working. Obviously on your flow you might want to right click and shade smooth, make it look a lot nicer, but it's working, so that's the good news. So now we can move on to the next step. All right, because it's working, you don't need to bake everything in now. You could bake it to preview it, but it would be such a waste of time. What you probably want to do is maybe switch to render view mode, which is this top button over here, and you can see how it would look. At the moment it doesn't look that great, so we want to make a few changes. We're still on that first frame that rendered, and now we just want to make sure that the lighting is set up correctly. So we're going to choose the sun. I'm going to click on the object data properties of the light, change it to sun, maybe make it 25 is pretty strong, and make the base light maybe like a bright warm color like a sun, orangey yellow. I guess that should be fine. Next thing you want to do is select your domain, which is in the place of where your flows are, and we're going to go to the material properties, and you want to change this to your glass material because water looks like that. It may not look like that right now from how we see. You can probably go to your render settings quickly and just turn on ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflection, which is a big one. And in my one I had motion blur, but I don't really see the benefit in it. But that's the main stuff that you want to make the water look a little bit more real. Maybe you want a different color water, so we're going to just choose maybe a blue, I guess. And you can also change the roughness, make it crazy shiny or not shiny at all. 0.2 is very, very shiny, but still pretty cool. And shiny means that when you have lights above it, it reflects better. I think in my tutorial I had it on standard. I didn't mess with this too much. Now with that setup, you'll notice that it also changed here because they're all part of the domain, which is pretty cool. The next thing you want to do is maybe just choose materials for these things. And the main thing I did was I just clicked on a new material and it eventually loaded. Ideally before Christmas. All right. So don't tell me you've got a crappy PC and you can't do this. Anyone can do this. Let's choose a material now. Now, there's a couple of options. So if you want to go for the whole light effect, which I initially did and I didn't end up doing, but you can choose an emission and maybe you say, listen, yeah, let's make this first one shiny orange. By the way, even though it doesn't look visible, the lines and stuff, because it's all one big light, this becomes more apparent when liquid fills this entire area. And you might decide, hover over this strength of here and press I and create a keyframe. And you might say, you know what, at frame 40, I want this to be, I don't know, 20. Hover over this with your mouse, press I. And then you might say at frame 60, I want this to be 0 and press I. So when we go to 50, when we go to 50, you'll see it at 0.076. When we go to 30, you'll see it at 0.56. It kind of like makes it smooth out. If you want a sharper effect, you'd go to, for example, 39. And you would say, I want this to be 1. Hover over this, press I. And then from frame 39 to 40, it'll be a sharp change. I'm imagining, let's change the strength to 20. I. So now when you're on 40, it's this bright, but when you're on 39, it's that. So it almost like becomes super bright, a very bright light. And by the way, this light, good chance it shows up on the water. So that's one option. Another option, you can select the next one and you can click new. And we can choose, you can choose principled BSDF if you want, or you might say, listen here, for this one, I want to have a glossy feel. And glossy does look nice, and you make it not rough at all, so all the light around this will reflect on this, which is quite a cool effect. And you might go for a blacky gloss, and this will look very, very cool in the final render. And next one, you might say, let's just do something normal. Choose a base color. Let's make this one, I don't know, pink. And let's just increase the subsurface to 0.3. And let's just change the subsurface color to green or orange, I guess. It gives this real weird sharp pink. And final one. I haven't done a lot of tutorials on materials, nor have I dived deep in that area yet, so I will eventually one day, but probably not in the next 6 months. Let's choose a color. Let's make this one green, and I'm quite happy with that. So we've got the cartoon style there, the standard pink style there, the glossy black, and the emission, the light there, which is quite cool. And we could have made one a glass color, but screw it. I think this looks pretty good. And the next thing I did was, let's just hide this. I created a new collection for stuff that is none of the stuff. I'm just going to call this stuff. This is not part of your camera or lights. It's not part of your domain, your flow, or your effectors. This is just stuff I'm using to light up the water. So I click on mesh, I click on UV, press numpad 1, press G, Z, bring it up to about there. G, X, chuck it to about there. Numpad 7, G, Y, bring it down to about here. And then I just choose different emission colors. I click new, emission. Maybe we go for pastel colors like this blue. Make the strength at least 5. Shift D, X, chuck this one over here, but make this one, I don't know, pastel pink, I guess. Oh, but now the mistake we made is we never created a new material. So I'm going to click new, click on the original material, minus that, change this to emission, make it pastel blue, and choose a strength of 5. Press Shift D, Y, chuck it to about there. Add a new color. Get rid of the old color for this one. Change this to emission, and we're going to make this one, I don't know, green. Once again, emission strength 5. Shift D, X, chuck it to about there, and add a new material, new, delete the old material, select the new material, change it to emission, and I don't know, that should be good. Something like that should be interesting on the water, the way it would reflect. And yeah, so we kind of have our scene set up, and the next thing we want to do is just set up the camera so it moves and follows. Well, the only way to do that accurately is to bake in the water and then know which frames where the water will be. But let me just show you how to create the camera rig. It's Shift A, mesh, curve, circle, and we're going to have to create a new collection for this because it is something else. New collection. We're going to call it rig, and we're going to move this Bezier curve into the rig, and we're also going to move the camera into the rig. So we've got our whole camera rig here in its own collection to the original collection. Yeah, it's a bit OCD, but it helps. Next thing you want to do is select the Bezier circle, press S to scale it out, and make sure we can see it. Something like that should be fine. Next thing you want to do is select your camera, Shift select the Bezier curve. Bezier is the light orange. Control P, object. Now, when you select the Bezier curve and you press RZ, camera follows, because the rig, the Bezier circle, which you're going to rename camera rig, is the parent to the camera. So now our first place, we already know it's going to be somewhere here. So we can just zoom in, find a spot, and press Control Alt Numpad 0. Select your camera, press G, and just move it in place. Go to your camera settings, and maybe you want to increase the focal length to zoom in. Maybe you want to start off zoomed out, and then by frame 20 you zoom in. And let's just go to frame 1. And this is, this is very, very basic stuff. I'm sure you know how to do this part. But for complete accuracy, you have to bake things in first, then set up your camera. Then once your camera is set up correctly based on the bake, then you would, once you got it in frame 1, let's say this is where you want frame 1 to be for your camera, you hover down here, your timeline, and you press I. Sorry, you hover over here. With your camera selected, you press I. I normally click location, rotation, and scale. And the other thing you probably want to do now is that you'll say, listen here, at frame 40, you probably want to select your rig. And your rig, if we go back to frame 1, the only thing we do with the rig is the rotation. So let's go back there quickly. I would this is actually painful waiting for this to load all the time. There we go. Now you're going to press I. You can choose rotation, or you can just do location, rotation, and scale. It just covers everything to be safe. We go back to 40, frame 40 quickly. Reason why it's taking so long is my PC sucks, and 150 resolution is like the max this PC can handle. We're going to press R, X, Z, bring it into about there, and press I, location, rotation, and scale. Now we select the camera, and we want to mess with the focal length. So we might want to say, now we want the focal length to be 96. Hover over this with your mouse, press I. But to make sure it doesn't mess up the previous shot, you might want to say at frame 39, you want this to be, 64. And if you go back to frame 1, we were careful to make sure that this was the default, I believe. We'll see now. But this would, basically what I'm showing you, I should give you the gist of how to set up your scene. And the reason why you want to bake first, because you'll know where the liquid will end up. Yeah, we actually didn't set up the keyframe for the focal length starting off. Focal length starting off, we wanted it to be on 50. So we have to press I. So we'll slowly zoom in and zoom out depending on these keyframes, which is crucial. So if we press, let's just choose solid view mode. If we press play, you can see the camera's moving slowly but surely. Keep in mind, this is crystal smooth, probably way too fast. 24 frames is 1 second. So this is moving smooth like butter. You can see it zoom into the next section, because by frame 40, water should start be pouring down over there roughly. If I have to guess, because I haven't baked it. I'm not going to bake it in this tutorial, but I'll show you how to bake it. Let's pause this, only because I want to be alive to do the next tutorial. It takes too long to bake on this PC. Right, so now that to bake it in, you want to select your domain, and you want to go to your physics properties, and you can just resume the bake that you started and wait for it to finish, and then you'll know exactly which frame the water is and where you want your camera to be, and you can set it up that way, which is perfect. And one thing you want to do before you render, you want to turn this on over here, and it is imperative that you make sure you don't render your flows. It is crucial. That's the only thing you don't have to render. Everything else needs to be rendered. The next thing you probably want to mess with is the background. Now, if you set everything up, you've got the camera set up and everything, one of the final touches is to mess with your background. And to mess with your background, I would go to your shader editor, change this to world, and up front, I'll delete this background image. Then I'll press Shift A, go to textures and click environmental textures, select this, and I would connect this to the surface. And I would download a free HDRI image. Let me open one, for example. I think I have one in downloads. Yeah, let's use this one here. Open this up. Let's go to render view mode quickly. And there we go, it pops in. And by having this HDR background image, doesn't matter what one you choose. Let's choose a different one quickly. I have another example. Yeah, let's choose this one. Just gives more things to reflect on the water to make the water look a little bit more interesting, especially based on the angle the camera is at. Yeah, so that's kind of why I like to use HDRI images. Now, where do you find HDRI images for free? Easy to download, I'll show you. Place I go for free images is HDRI Haven. Check them out, see if you like it. And all you need to do is I hover over this, HDRI Haven. Oh my word. Let's click on gallery. Or HDRIs actually would be better probably. Let's go back to HDRIs. We don't need to see the work people have done. It's loads of fun because you can set up put your models in a nice scene. And you can find an HDRI that you like. And let's say we want to use this one here. We say that looks good. Let's start. We probably don't need anything more than 2K because it's not really the focus at all. 1K is probably enough. And once it's downloaded, you can go to your Blender file and you can just open it up, I guess. I think it's this one, yeah. And just like that. Now, obviously, this affects the way water reflects on this based on the HDRI, which is great. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So we'll use that HDRI. Now, what else could we do to improve the scene, which could make it quite interesting? Well, let me show you some render settings. So besides for the obvious stuff I already showed you, which is ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflection, you could up the render, but this will make things slower. It should be fine for what you're doing. So I'd leave it as is. But what's this setting called again? Output properties. You initially want to output this, find a folder, create one if you have to, and choose an output folder for this, and set this to 16. And if you've got all the time in the world, make it 100% for perfect quality, or make it, if you've got no time, make the compression 0%. And you want to render out all the images first, which I've actually already done. And you can choose, yeah, this is the settings I actually used initially. And once you've rendered everything out and you're happy with it, the next thing you want to do is click over here, switch to video sequence, click on, let's just make this the predominant thing here, click on add, and you would say image or sequence. And I have an image sequence here, I think in my desktop, which would be my temp file. And you just select the top one, image one, scroll all the way down to the bottom one, which I think it was 250 images. Add image strip. Probably want to move this to the start, so it starts on 4 to holding shift for accuracy. 1 0. There we go. Starts on 0. And we're quite happy with that. Next thing you want to do after you've rendered out the images, you want to switch this to AVI, JPEG, RAW, or the one I like to use because it uses the least amount of space, easier to share through your phone with your friends, is FFmpeg video. It's a format I like to use. And now with this setup, you can just click on render again, and you'd render the animation out again in a single video. And the final result you'll get should look something like this. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.